For today's discourse, we are going back to the middle-length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya, which we don't get to do often, as often as I would like, that is. This is an unusual sutta that we'll be covering today. It's a long sutta, so I will try my best to not interfere or interrupt with my commentary, because it's such a beautiful sutta, nevertheless unusual to today's taste buds of individuals, where we come from in our thinking and what we accept as individuals when we come across the Dhamma. Because oftentimes it is our own expectations and our worldviews that we bring. It is not necessarily the Dhamma that brought us to it. It is our own, the appeal that we have found within some elements of the Dhamma. But it is conditional in the sense that oftentimes we have so many expectations that we go looking for them in the suttas, in the discourses, in whatever element, whatever aspect of the Dhamma we happen to like or feel drawn to. And that is very dangerous, because dangerous in the sense that it keeps us in the dark. The Buddha called it moha, delusion, because we have a prototype, we have a tracing paper with some tracing done, some drawing done on it, and we are looking for that match in the Dhamma. And if we don't find it, we drop the Dhamma, we exclude it, we toss it aside, we say this is not what I signed up for, or this is not appealing to me, so I'll go browse over there in that aisle over there, which is often what has happened ever since Buddhism came to the West over 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So many of us will approach the Dhamma with our own expectations, our own philosophies, and unfortunately the world has been run on this deductive reasoning approach, where everything has to make sense, everything has to be proven, everything has to be experientially tested, this and that, empirically proven, measured, this and that. And if you can't see it, definitely, then you have to, put it over there on the shelf for the time being. For this reason, oftentimes many people are depriving themselves of the wonders, the full beauty of the Dhamma, which is what I have attempted here to introduce for us today in this sutta, which is the Māra Tajjanīya Sutta, Scolding and Teaching Māra a Lesson. Māra, which oftentimes is looked at as a symbol, just like in the case of hells and heavens, looked at by, that is, contemporary teachers or secular type teachers, even if they are monastics. Many people have a ton of apologetics to go along with these. Even when they're talking about rebirth, there's so many but it could be this also. You don't have to accept it. It could be this. Oh, it could be. You could see it as a metaphor here. No, these are real, and that's what this sutta. Why I call this sutta unusual in that sense. It's not unusual on its own. It's unusual only to our taste because we're not used to it. We have grown immune to seeing the other aspects of life, things that we cannot necessarily measure with the tools that we currently have in our possession. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So, as I mentioned, I will try to speak less because it's a long sutta, and my intention is to complete it today. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, it is the Majjhima Nikaya number 50, Middle Length Discourses, number 50, Sutta number 50, and the Majjhima Nikaya has 152. So, this is almost a third of the way in. And it's the middle length discourses. It comes from the Chula Yamaka Vagga, the shorter section on the paired discourses. And it's called Māra Tajjanīya Sutta, Scolding and Teaching Māra, a lesson, which I just finished translating this week. That's how I am using the title, because it's rather poignant, I find, because of the ongoings of the sutta. All right, let's go in. I have personally heard this. Once the Venerable Mahamogallana was staying at the Deer Park in the Vesakala forest, among the Sumsumara peaks in the land of the Bhaggas. It was during that time that the Venerable Mahamogallana was engaged in walking meditation outside his kuti, pacing back and forth. You can almost imagine him walking. Now, on that day, Māra, the evil one, had snuck his way into the Venerable Mahamogallana's body by invading and hiding within the intestines in his gut. Meanwhile, the Venerable Mahamogallana, on becoming aware of the unusual nature of the bodily sensations he was experiencing, began considering, well, this is rather strange. Why does my gut suddenly feel so heavy and tight? As though I just ate an entire bag of starchy beans. Not long after, the Venerable Mahamogallana decided to leave his walking meditation practice and headed back down to his kuti. Kuti is his cell, where his room. We use it a lot in the suttas, we see it. So he headed back down to his kuti, where he went and sat on a seat that was made ready for him. On sitting down, the Venerable Mahamogallana began closely observing his body, while wisely reflecting. That's Yoniso Manasikara, by the way. It's wise reflecting. At that very moment, the Venerable Mahamogallana clearly saw that it was, in fact, Māra, the evil one, who had somehow entered and snuck into his body, and now was hiding in the intestines of his gut. Having discovered Māra in his hiding place, the Venerable Mahamogallana then spoke these scolding words to Māra, the evil one. Get out of your hiding place, O evil one. Get out now, O Māra, and stop creating trouble by causing harm either to the Tathagata or to the Tathagata's own disciple. Otherwise, you will be struck down and end up facing much hardship and suffering for a very long time indeed, bringing such horrendous suffering upon you that is much more severe than the one you are causing me now. Māra does not understand. Māra is not a fictional entity, is not a symbol. We have to understand this. Now, not every difficulty that we encounter on the path or in life is necessarily Māra. It doesn't mean that as well. Nevertheless, when we get closer and closer to the Dhamma, whether in trying to find the Dhamma, coming to grab onto that thin thread that will pull us towards the Dhamma, bring us closer to the Dhamma, And then there are suddenly obstacles, whether it's physical, psychological, social, geographical, global, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it is, in fact, Māra. Because Māra has access to memories. Imagine a series of, a movie series, or like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, etc. And you're the main actor. But you're only focused on that certain portion of the series. That's all you know. That's all the script you got. But Māra is the one who knows your defilements, the kilesas in our hearts. Māra knows, as well as the other hang-ups that are very, very critical. And we have fallen so much, so often, given a set of circumstances, given a set of encounters, situations, weaknesses, even if we do not know them. Some years ago, I recorded an answer to a series of questions where I think it was titled, Māra knows you better than you know yourself. That's so true. Because he sees the other versions of the parts of the movie, which you haven't seen, as well as where it's headed. So Māra has a better purview than most of us do, which unfortunately works to our disadvantage at times, because we do not see what we're seeing is what's in front of us. And one of the biggest ways that we falter and we lose our way is when we say, well, what is this Māra mumbo jumbo thing? This is nonsense. This is very ancient. This is very past, Asian, past, old world type of thinking. This doesn't go well with real science. Well, that's one of the best tools that Māra uses. That's why most of the scientists are lost. They live immoral lives, most of them. They have no practice of sati. They have no practice of samadhi. There's no insights taking place. Yet how can we look up to such individuals as the model as to how we need to lead our lives? That's why the suttas really are a beacon. They are the lighthouse for us to see what's there in the dark. Life is dark unless we have the Dhamma to show us what's what. And then we make our decisions, of course. This is not encouraging you to believe, but at least to give yourself the opportunity to be coming face to face with what is out there, mentioned clearly, as the case is with this very real incident that has happened. Okay, so he just scolded Māra to get out of his body. Venerable Mahamogallana. Let's see. Then, on hearing these words, Māra, the evil one, began reflecting. It is impossible that somehow this recluse could see me, let alone know that I am secretly hiding here inside his gut. No, he surely must be guessing or bluffing, that's all. For how could he or anyone else, including his own teacher, detect or reveal the fact that I've secretly invaded his body, and that now I am hiding here in his gut? No, there is no way that he could know it is me, causing him all these bellyaches, trying to agitate his heart. No, nobody has the ability to discover my hiding place, not even his own teacher, let alone to command me to get out by saying, get out of your hiding place, O evil one, get out now, etc. It repeats that refrain, whatever Venerable Mahamogallana just mentioned. Then the Venerable Mahamogallana, on reading the very thoughts of Māra, the evil one, exclaimed, "You're wrong again, Māra, for I do, in fact, know you far more than you think you know yourself. as well as your abilities. So don't go on telling yourself it's impossible that somehow this recluse could possibly see me, let alone know that I am secretly hiding here inside his gut. No, he surely must be guessing or bluffing, that's all. So he's repeating now every single thing that Māra was thinking. This is a deep ability to be, it's part of the abhinyas to be able to tell what the other person is thinking. But especially powerful it becomes when it involves other beings that, well, they're invisible. No one can see them, let alone to be able to see what those invisible beings are thinking. Venerable Mahamogallana had that ability, as did the Buddha, as did many noble disciples. For that to begin sprouting within oneself, the practice has to deepen so much. It has to really go deep. And equanimity is an essential part of that development. So this is real, to be able to see the thoughts, even the thoughts of devas, not just someone like an evil being like Māra. So Māra can't believe his own ears. First of all, he was caught. Second, he's in denial that he was caught, because in his mind, it's impossible that anyone could actually figure out what he's thinking, where he is, what his plans are, what he's scheming. Remember, several months ago, or it was last year, we did Baka, the Brahma. Even Brahma gods are deceived by Māra. That's the kind of power that Māra has of deception on beings, irrespective on which echelon of beings of the cosmology they belong, however high up in the Deva rungs they belong. It really doesn't matter. That's why Māra is driven mad whenever he comes across any meditator in this Dhamma and discipline, especially anyone who penetrates into the first jhana even. That is unknown territory for Māra, let alone someone who's developed more and more, has gone into all the 8 jhanas, and in fact, someone who can even drop into the freedoms of attainments of respective attainments of Sotapatti, Sakadagami, Anagami, and especially the Arahant. So these are all terre incognite, for unknown territories for Māra. Because Māra is like that spoiled child that gets his way or her way in everything in the universe. And that's just the status of Māra. Just like Sakka and other beings, just like leaders of countries or heads of companies, once one person is removed by death or something, another one comes and fulfills that role, takes that job. That is how the case is with Sakka, that is how it is with Mahabrahma, that is how it is also with Māra. But I'll leave that for later in case some of you might have more questions about that, as to where does he fall in the cosmology, Buddhist cosmology thing. So anyhow, he is, Venerable Mahamogallana is reiterating exactly what Māra was thinking, exposing his own thoughts. Then Māra, the evil one, on realizing that he was indeed discovered and thus called out, began reflecting. Wow, it seems this recluse has indeed seen me, for he clearly knows that I am secretly hiding here inside his gut, which is why he commands me thus to get out. Then, while attempting to escape the Venerable Mahamogallana's gaze, Māra, the evil one, came out of the Venerable's mouth and went standing against the door of the kuti. So he jutted out came out of his mouth and went stood there at the door, hoping that it went undetected. Then, clearly witnessing this taking place, the Venerable Mahamogallana directly addressed Māra, the evil one, who was now standing right next to his door, speaking these words of rebuke at Māra. And do you actually think you hid yourself from me now that you are standing right there in front of me? You do realize, right, that I can see you clearly, O evil one? So stop telling yourself there's absolutely no way that he could see me or detect my moves. That's because I can clearly see you standing right there against the door, as well as observe not only every move you make, but I know every single one of your thoughts too, that you are pondering, O evil one. Then the Venerable Mahamogallana continued by saying, you don't know this, but a very long time ago, this person you are looking at now, pointing at himself, now, Venerable Mahamogallana, this person you are looking at now, O evil one, was Māra himself. Back then, however, I was known as Dusi, the evil one, the Māra of that age, long time ago. In that existence, I had a sister by the name of Kali, who happened to have a son, my own nephew, who called me his uncle. Now know this, O Māra, that nephew of mine was none other than you, who now is standing there at my door, trying to hide himself from me. What a scene. It would be a perfect script, right? Wonderful scene. It was at that time, O evil one, that the perfectly self-awakened Buddha of that age, the Tathagata Kakusandha, the Blessed Lord, had appeared in the world. Now, it so happened that the fortunate pair of friends, Vidhura and Sanjiva, were the two chief disciples of the Buddha Kakusandha. By the way, every Buddha, every Tathagata has two chief disciples. The last Tathagata of the Buddha of our age, fortunately for us, because we're still living in that Buddha age, it's such a rare opportunity to be born at the time of a Buddha when the sasana is still alive. I don't think many of us really appreciate it well enough. Just the fact that we are born as humans on a planet that still sustains life, where the Dhamma is still available, of a Buddha, of a Tathagata. It's beyond belief in its rarity. That's not the norm. So in those many, many eons ago, there was the Tathagata Kakusanda who had these two chief disciples, just like the case was in this case, in our Buddha age, with Venerable Sariputta and Mahamogallana. In those days, it was Venerable Vidhura and Sanjiva. So he's pointing those out. Okay. Furthermore, none of the Buddha Kakusanda's disciples could match, let alone surpass, the wisdom that the chief disciple Vidhura possessed, nor his ability to teach and clarify the Dhamma. Thus, it was due to his all-encompassing and thorough understanding, O Māra, that the chief disciple had received the designation Vidhura, the peerless. That's what it means, peerless, matchless. Meanwhile, as it relates to the other chief disciple, Sanjiva, he would retreat by secluding himself to practice meditation, whereby he would spend his time sitting alone at the roots of trees or in caves in total isolation. And with much ease and no difficulty whatsoever, he would attain and enter into the sublime meditative state, wherein the complete cessation of perfection and feeling takes place. Thus, one day, while the Venerable Sanjiva was sitting in seclusion at the roots of a certain tree, having attained and entered into the sublime meditative state of complete cessation of perception and feeling, a group of farmers, cowherds, and other cattle herders from the village nearby, along with other passers-by, on witnessing him sitting absolutely motionless, not reacting to anything occurring around him, began discussing amongst themselves. Oh, wow! How remarkably impressive! This recluse must have died while sitting in meditation. How truly wonderful! But seeing that he is now dead, we should take care of his remains by going ahead and cremating his body. This is one of the reasons why, for many people, it's necessary. Well, there aren't that many people who nowadays could enter into this level of attainment. Sanya Vedaita Nirodha Samapatti. This is the highest attainment that which is also considered to be the doorway, as we saw in the Pottapala Sutta and other suttas, to attain arahantship. But it's such a freeing state because it stems out of the akincanyana, from the state of nothingness, jhana, which is number 7, jhana. But instead of going to neva sanya, nusanya, the neither perception, non-perception, which was already in practice in those days in India, which doesn't lead anywhere, the Buddha had discovered this path to the cessation of feelings and perception, which only the Dhamma provides. Only the teachings of the Buddha, the earliest teachings of the Buddha, provide. None else do. No other tradition, no other religion anywhere has this. Every Tathagata teaches this, by the way. And that is what Lord Kakusanda Buddha, the Tathagata, had taught his disciple, Sanjiva, which he was practicing. But what happens is all the signs of life also disappear. So for all intents and purposes, you're like a statue to the observer. So we don't know what exactly they were doing, what was happening, but he had remained motionless to the point where they thought he must have died. So let's see what happens. So those people went around gathering some dried leaves and grass, twigs, cow dung, and whatever they could find to burn, and then proceeded to pile them around Sanjiva, the chief disciple's motionless body. Once this was done, they lit it on fire, and then all went on their way, leaving behind the burning funeral pyre they had built. Now, if it is truly the attainment of cessation of feeling and perception, or perception and feeling, then nothing could touch you. Nothing could touch even the robes. Not a single hair on your body, let's say, not the hair, there's no hair on the head, but not a single hair on your hand or anywhere is going to get scorched, touched. None. But the maximum a person can stay in this state is 7 days before they die. So that's why whoever would enter into this state has to, well, just to enter the state, you have to resolve in doing so, but you also have to make that affirmation as to how long you are going to stay in it. And then at that moment, just like clockwork, the person wakes up. Okay, so it's not done haphazardly, irresponsibly. And they know they're not going to push beyond 7 days. unless, of course, they want to die in that state. But in this case, that wasn't the situation, as we'll see next. Then, much later, O Māra, when the night had completely passed and the sun was about to rise, the Venerable Sanjiva emerged from his meditative attainment of the cessation of feeling and perception. And by shaking off the remaining gray ash and dust from his body, he got up and, after adjusting his robes, he took his alms bowl with him and proceeded to walk to the nearby village in order to obtain his daily meal. It would be lovely to assume or presume that the Venerable Sanjiva, when he got up, when he opened his eyes, when one by one his sankharas were coming back and he was able to identify he's in this body, and then he would see the ash on him. What was his reaction? It's a curious image to get up and, what happened here? He's all covered in ash. Now, O evil one, on witnessing him approach, those same farmers, cowherds, and other cattle herders, as well as the passers-by who had seen him sitting in meditation and cremated his body in the forest, exclaimed in astonishment, "What a miraculous feat! How truly incredible indeed! For this most powerful recluse has come back to life by resurrecting himself from death itself and walked away untouched by the fires, in which we placed and cremated him ourselves. And this itself, O Māra, you evil being, was what gave the chief disciple the designation Sanjiva, the resurrected." Meanwhile, the evil one of that age, Māra Dusi, who was observing all this taking place, began pondering. It's really strange that whenever I look at these recluses who are lovely in character and living with such purity of virtue in their behavior, for some reason or other, despite all my efforts, I still cannot find out their next place of birth. Why is it that I am unable to see or know at all where these recluses are headed for their next rebirth destination? But then Māra Dusi decided, while reflecting, what if I invade and take possession of all those Brahmins and villagers who now support those bhikkhus, and by controlling their behavior, I drive them instead to keep harassing, abusing, and attacking all those recluses who are lovely in character, living with such purity of virtue in their behavior? Yes, perhaps that way, by taking charge of the situation, I, the all-powerful evil one, Māra Dusi, could acquire an advantage and an upper hand by finding a gap and thus cause agitation in the hearts of those bhikkhus, as I detect a vulnerable and weak spot in their character, and thus regain my control over these bhikkhus. This is basically giving us the backdoor access to the way Māra thinks. Now, how is this beneficial for us? How does this help us in any way? Isn't this just supposed to be almost like a fairy tale or some story? Okay, nice, this and that, but how is this going to help me? It helps us in every way possible if we know how to approach it, because during our practice, in our lives, we run into so many challenging situations. Sometimes we can't even explain. Sometimes individuals around us behave in ways that are mean, that are heartless, inconsiderate at least. And we don't know why. And of course, we kind of localize it at that person's level. We just say, oh, this person is doing this to me, or that was the reason why this happened, without looking at the bigger picture. So this sutta gives us a bigger picture as to what might really be going on. Now, to be able to see this, we have to really value the Dhamma in our lives, which unfortunately many people do not. They think of it as just another accessory, as just another thing, as just another theory or principle or some teaching that they like. Many of us have gone through many lifetimes with the intention of coming in contact with the Dhamma. But now we just see it as a curiosity. And then we go huddling back to our weaker ways of behaving, our habits, habitual patterns, our sankharas, our anusayas, the hidden tendencies. And there goes another life, and Dhamma, the seeking of the Dhamma, dies in us in that life. And Māra can see where you went, where you landed, by the way. But in the case of an arahant, it's impossible. Because the person has released oneself. And that is what the Dhamma serves. The Dhamma doesn't serve us simply to do good in life. Many of the evil people in the world today and in many eras, kings and royals and powerful people who are in positions of authority, ruling over so many others and resources, they were people, beings who did good deeds. This is something that people don't understand. The rich, mean, heartless, powerful politicians, this, that, whatever you have in your mind as an evil character in the world, they were really individuals who did a lot of good deeds. What we call in Buddhism, punya, merit-making deeds. But the evil in the heart does not go away with the good deed that one does. This is something that is failed again and again in being demonstrated and taught to people. The highlight then is, if you're practicing spirituality, some type of a religious path, then doing good is the ultimate. It's not. That is what's distinguishing you who, let's say, are not wealthy or not where you want to be in life, and somebody who is extremely wealthy. I think Elon Musk has been approved by his people to become the first trillionaire, announced, documented, trillionaire in the world. There's not an ounce of sila. It doesn't matter. The amount of good deeds that the person has done in a past life has brought him in this position, put him there, led him there. It doesn't do anything to just simply want to do good deeds, to be compassionate towards others. That's not the Dhamma. That's not the sealing of the Dhamma. The sealing is blasting away samsara. That means releasing yourself from the cycle of birth and death. And no good deed will deliver that. No good deed can ever do that for us. So people have lowered the bar to so low, such low levels. But that has become the Dhammic, the whole message of Dhamma, apparently, for many people. And they avoid suttas like this. No, there's a message here. There are hindrances that are not necessarily only coming from you and your own thinking. Māra is also involved. And it doesn't give up. He didn't give up even with the Buddha. If you notice, even after awakening, the Buddha himself was again and again encountering Māra, who kept on coming, trying to, in his mind, try to create some stumbling block, as if to tempt the Buddha. It's like, get out of here. It's like, it's not going to work. Same thing here with Venerable Mahamogallana. He's trying to do so many things, invading his body, creating havoc in his body to create pain, thinking that he's going to agitate his heart, because that's where Māra functions best. But it's not going to work. So he is teaching, trying to scold him, but at the same time, hopefully get some sense into him, but unsuccessfully. So He now is pointing out how Māra Dusi, the Māra of that age, which happened to be himself, Venerable Mahamogallana, was that Māra Dusi. That's what he's saying to this Māra. Because he now invaded those villagers who burned his body and now were respecting him to do the opposite. And so it was that they began harassing, abusing, and attacking all those recluses who were lovely in character, living with such purity of virtue in their behavior. They engaged in such unwholesome and harmful behaviors while accusing and making false statements about those venerable ones, by slandering and hurling insults at them, such as, "Behold these useless and utterly despicable shaven heads, who are in fact savages in their behavior. These dark-skinned rascals, where even the best among them are truly lower than the very dirt stains left by the feet of our noble kinsmen." Wow. Take a look at these shallow beings who are in fact the worst scum of the earth, who go on claiming, "We are meditators. We are indeed excellent meditators." But these so-called recluses just go on sitting motionless, while being absolutely clueless of what's taking place around them in the world, as their heads and shoulders go on slouching. These gloomy characters that are no good for nothing. They just keep meditating while totally lost in their mindless absorptions, utterly useless and burdensome for us, good kinsmen, as they keep sitting fully lost in their endless contemplations. Actually, they are very much like owls, sitting quietly on a tree branch, remaining completely undetected, making mischievous plans and scheming anxiously, motionless but always ready to hunt when no one's watching, by sweeping down and plucking out that unsuspecting mouse upon whom they prey. In the same manner, these shallow beings, who are in fact the worst scum of the earth, go on claiming, "We are meditators. We are indeed excellent meditators." So here is a series of metaphors. The first one was the owl, the simile. So Māra's infiltrated their mind, their hearts, and now these same people are abusing those monks. Most people are patujjanas. They are easily accessible for Māra to dominate. It requires tremendous love. It requires tremendous devotion to truth to withstand these attacks. That's why it might be surprising to hear that anyone can be invaded. Invaded. You know, we've heard terms like exorcist. And in our society, these terms are shunned and looked away from, and just like, oh, these are mumbo jumbo type of things. And it doesn't land well for many people, many good meditators even. Because as I said in the beginning, we have our own expectations as to what the Dhamma should be and should not include. In fact, in this case, something like being invaded or possessed. Well, here we're seeing perfect example of a possession. This is something that you see again and again throughout the suttas, in many suttas. But a person who practices the three trainings, sila, samadhi, panya, need not worry about it. Well, one could say, well, what about Venerable Mahamogallana Bhante? His body was invaded. Yes, his body was invaded and he was detected. It's like a virus that gets infiltrated into the body, and sooner or later the body's immune system will kick it out. That's what your sati will do. That's what your sila will do. You will know something's not right. Most people have things that are happening to them that are not right, but they're not there to see it. The Dhamma allows you, gives you the eyes to see it. Because these people, just a little while earlier, they were bowing to him. They were offering food to the monks. They were so full of respect. They were so inspired. That's why many people come and go in Dhamma circles. They get inspired, they get touched, they get moved because something there clicked, something was liked by them. But it's temporary, it's shifty, it's fickle, it's unreliable, it's unsteady, it's empty, it's shallow. But if you have the three trainings, it's impossible for you to be shallow. Impossible. That's another power of sati there for you. So the rest of that section, each of these are basically have a refrain. So we have the owl, and then the people are repeating, oh, they claim, the monks claim that they are meditators, da, 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 da. So I'm going to avoid that section. And the sutta is up on the website, so please do access it and read it at your own pace. Truly, they are no different than those prowling scavenger jackals, scouring and lurking around the banks of rivers, making mischievous plans and scheming anxiously, motionless but always opportunistic, and ready to make their move and pounce on the poor and unsuspecting fish that come near the water's surface. In the same manner, these shallow beings, who are in fact the worst scum of the earth, go on claiming we are meditators. We are indeed excellent meditators. Really, there is no difference between these so-called recluses and street cats that sit by rubbish heaps, patiently waiting while making no sounds, who although may look motionless, but in fact are anxiously anticipating and preparing to jump and pounce on the poor and unsuspecting mice and other rodents that come looking for food. Indeed, these so-called meditating recluses are no different than those lame and unworkable donkeys that stand there idly, regurgitating and chewing all day long, contributing nothing to society, skulking and loitering on street corners, grazing and uselessly standing there, quietly ruminating, seemingly lost in absorption. Meanwhile, they contribute nothing to the community. Really powerful, painful statements, right? Then, O evil one, many of those people engaging in such abusive behavior towards those bhikkhus met with death, as their bodies in one way or another broke down. And right at the moment of their dying, immediately after expiring their last breath, those people found themselves dragged into the miserable realms, reappearing into the woeful and lowest planes of existence, where they began experiencing terribly unimaginable suffering within the hells. It was then, O evil one, that the perfectly self-awakened Buddha of that age, the Tathagata Kakusandha, called over his bhikkhus and informed them by saying, Bhikkhus, the Brahmins and householders of a certain village have been invaded and possessed by Māra Tajjanīya, the evil one. He was behind infecting the hearts and minds of those people by controlling their behavior, scheming his evil plans throughout against you, O bhikkhus, while conspiring. Through these Brahmins and householders, I will keep harassing, abusing, and attacking all those recluses who are lovely in character, living with such purity of virtue in their behavior. Thus, his plan was that by taking charge of the situation, he, the evil one, Māra Tajjanīya, could acquire an advantage and an upper hand by finding a gap in you, bhikkhus, and agitate your hearts, trying to detect a vulnerable and weak spot in your character, and thus somehow regain his control over you. Then, by continuing to speak, the perfectly self-awakened Buddha, the Tathagata Kakusandha, instructed those bhikkhus by saying, Therefore, O bhikkhus, you must meditate while pervading one quarter direction with loving kindness. So too with the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. So above, below, and across, and in every manner, as you keep radiating with a mind that is fully drenched in loving kindness. ever expanding while enveloping and growing in all directions, immeasurably, and without having in you even the slightest tension or resentment. This is the Brahma Vihara practice. When part of it, when you're sitting, you're directing it into one quarter. Quarter means, in this case, if you divide your position, it's the space around you, into front, back, left, right, up, down, surrounding all around, and then all over, like a 360, like a globe, like a sphere. That's the image. But first you have to train in one direction. That's why it's not advisable for a person who's not done this to all of a sudden go ahead and try to radiate all over every direction at the same time. It's not feasible, and most of the time it doesn't work. Or they become very much strained and resentful. That's why it's so important to hear the last statements of the Buddha instruction. Without even the slightest tension or resentment. You cannot have resentment and tension while at the same time you're presuming that you're using metta. It does not work. Metta is metta through and through. It's complete consideration. There's no walls between you and others. There's no intentionality other than just pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring metta out. There's no plans. There's no, okay, I got to do this so that I can get that. Okay, let me just zap this person with or this direction or the world with metta so that I can move up the ladder of jhanas to go somewhere else, to higher. That's very sneaky. Sneaky and metta have nothing to do with each other. There's no benefit as such, like personal economics, to think about utilitarian benefits. Similarly, you must meditate while pervading one quarter direction with compassion, so that with the second quarter, so too with the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. So above, below, and across, in every direction, in every manner. So Lord Buddha is giving the same instruction now for karuna. That was the first one, was metta, now karuna. I am, as you can tell, jumping so that I can make most of our time here, because it's a refrain, it's a repeat, except that it's the 4 Brahma Viharas the Buddha is highlighting. So the first is metta, second is karuna, third is mudita, which is the altruistic and exuberant joy that you feel first inside of you. You cannot give what you do not have. Okay? You cannot force metta upon someone when your heart is like a cemetery or like a horror castle. It doesn't work. Or you're full of spite and anger and resentment and hatred towards others. It does not work. When you're full of selfishness, self-centeredness, I'm sorry. That's not metta that you're practicing. You're doing something, but it's not metta. But once it is, it's so beautiful. It's enveloping. It's not like there's no straining involved. It flows into each other. When the Buddha is saying, you pervade in one quarter direction, and then the other, and then the other, and then the other, and then up and down, and then all around, and all. You're not doing it in compartments, chunks, like eating a portion of a cake. That's yours. That is very compartmentalized. That's not the case. This flows in spite of you. When you're doing it right, even metta comes, and when you're distracted, metta says, hey, I'm doing this. You're just joining for the ride. It's so beautiful. It so spreads. It doesn't need your straining, your efforting. If it is, then there's some ego involved. That's why it requires so much trust. And you must meditate while pervading one quarter direction with equanimity. So too with the second quarter, the third quarter, the fourth quarter, so above, below, and across. And the same information for this last of the Brahma Viharas. Then, having thus received this instruction from their teacher, the Buddha, Kakusanda, those bhikkhus, all went and secluded themselves, whether into their individual kutis or to the remote wilderness areas, sitting by the exposed roots of trees or within mountain caves, as they all wholeheartedly engaged in the practice advised by the Blessed One. In this manner, those bhikkhus meditated while pervading one quarter direction with loving kindness, and so on and so forth, with same thing. So whatever we just read about the Brahma Viharas, the Buddha Kakusanda giving, so this is a portion where it's repeating that, but bhikkhus are practicing it. Meanwhile, we continue. Meanwhile, the evil one, Māra Tajjanīya, on witnessing how he had failed in his attempt to affect the bhikkhus in any way, began thinking, it's really strange that despite my best efforts, whenever I look at these recluses who are lovely in character and living with such purity of virtue in their behavior, for some reason or other, I still cannot find out their next place of birth. Why is it that I am unable to see or know at all where these recluses are headed for their next rebirth destination? Then Māra Tajjanīya decided, while reflecting, what if I invade and take possession of all the remaining Brahmins and villagers by controlling their behavior? Remember, one portion of the villagers died. They ended up in hell realms. And there are some of them left. So he's saying, why don't I go and possess the rest of them? But this time, have them show these bhikkhus respect by venerating, honoring, and paying homage to all those recluses who are lovely in character, living with such purity of virtue in their behavior. Yes, perhaps that way, by taking charge of the situation, I, the all-powerful evil one, Māra Tajjanīya, could get an advantage and an upper hand by finding a gap and agitate their hearts. Thus, as he had schemed, Māra Tajjanīya, the evil one of that era, again invaded the minds and bodies of the remaining Brahmins and householders in that village. And they, in turn, being completely under his control, behaved exactly as he willed, by showing respect towards those venerable ones. In that manner, those remaining Brahmins and householders started showing respect by venerating, honoring, and paying homage to all those recluses who are lovely in character, living with such purity of virtue in their behavior. Then, O evil one, this is Venerable Mahamogallana teaching still the Māra, who is standing right next to his door. So he's recounting the whole episode, which this Māra doesn't have a clue about. Then, O evil one, when the moment of death arrived for those people, as their bodies in one way or another broke down, right at the moment of their dying, immediately after expiring their last breath, those people found themselves reappearing into the divinely delightful realms, finding themselves surrounded by happiness unimaginable, for they were now reborn into the divine planes of existence within the heavens. They too exist. Nowhere in the suttas do you see Lord Buddha saying the heavens and hells, Māra, this and that don't exist. Or I'm just using metaphors here. Nowhere do you see that. It's just the contemporary, watered down teachings that are claiming to be Dhamma and their proponents who are spreading those lies and ruining the future and the present of so many people that have striven so hard to get to human birth yet again, only to miss the opportunity. So this effort, all these things that you guys are doing, the exposure of the Dhamma proper that you're getting, is to put a stop to that, or at least not allow it to affect you. Because heavens do exist. It was then, O evil one, that the perfectly self-awakened Buddha of that age, the Tathagata Kakusanda, again called over his bhikkhus, and this time informed them by saying, Bhikkhus, the Brahmins and householders of a certain village have been invaded and possessed by Māra Tajjanīya, the evil one. He was the one who infected their hearts and minds by controlling their behavior, scheming his evil plans against you, O bhikkhus, while conspiring. Through these Brahmins and householders, this time I will feign veneration. So it was a fake veneration. They were influenced by Māra. It didn't come from the heart. By having these people offer much respect and honor to all those recluses who are lovely in character, living with such purity of virtue in their behavior. Thus, his plan was that by taking charge of this situation, he, the evil one, Māra Tajjanīya, would get an advantage and an upper hand by finding a gap in you, bhikkhus, and creating agitation in your hearts, trying to detect a vulnerable and weak spot in your character, and thus somehow gain control over you. How would that create agitation or create a weak or vulnerable spot in a person when you're getting venerated, you're getting respect, renown, fame, possessions, offerings? Sounds familiar in the world, and especially in the world of Dhamma, in the world of Sangha, to be specific. Let's see what the Buddha says about that. Then, by continuing to speak, the perfectly self-awakened Buddha, the Tathagata Kakusanda, instructed those bhikkhus by saying, Therefore, O bhikkhus, whenever you look upon the body, you must meditate while clearly seeing and perceiving it to be ugly and dreadfully awful, instead of trying to look for something beautiful or lovely in it. This demolishes the whole scheme that Māra has. Because when you are taking care of your body, whether you're a monk, not monk, doesn't matter, layperson, when you're maintaining the health of the body, sooner or later, and there's resources coming, like food, this, that, attention. And if you have some areas of your body that are working well, because the person has not awakened fully, there are elements of ignorance, underlying tendencies, this and that, identifications. The person will start to go into it more, like it more. We call it vipallasa. You start distorting reality. You start wanting to look at something that is ugly as pretty. You look at the body that is impermanent and start hoping for this area, that area to stay permanent. Vipallasas, distortions. So as the people were offering food and saying, oh, Bhante, you have to, let me wash your feet. You just came, oh, Bhante, this, that. Sooner or later, you start thinking, yeah, I like my feet washed. Yeah, I like this. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. That is a trap, because that means the person has logged off from reality, unplugged from reality, and they're living in delusion. The Buddha is plugging them back to reality, which is the fact that the body is ugly. It's not stable. It's uncertain. It's fickle. It's always breaking apart. It's coming loose in more ways than one. Similarly, when experiencing food, you must relate to it and see it to be ultimately repulsive, instead of trying to look for something delicious or lovely in it. Food. When people offer respect and love, appreciation, offer gifts to monks, sometimes they bend over backwards to prepare something wonderful. They come and ask Bhante, what do you like? What do you like? When I was in Asia, it would happen, in Australia, it would happen, other places too, where people would come and try to look for something. Oh, Bhante, you like chocolate? What kind of chocolate would you like? Okay, it can easily get to your head if you're not mindful. Oh yeah, oh yeah. You mean to say I can get that expensive chocolate bar? I can get that really? Oh yeah, you're not saying it out loud, but that means that you're off the target, off the mark. It's just going to turn into excrement. There's nothing to celebrate about food. Be mindful of it. Yes, see the taste. Watch the taste buds. Okay, they might even be celebrating. Okay, but watch the mind. Is it tempted to celebrate? Is it tempted to become agitated? If it is, you are in the palm of Māra already. You've fallen for the trap. That's what the Lord Buddha Kakusanda was teaching the monks. He's saying, even if you're getting the honor and veneration, be on top of it. Don't let it get to your head. See, anicca, dukkha, anatta. That's why this path is so supreme, so clear, so sharp, so pure in its essence, at its roots. Also, when experiencing the world or existence as such in all its aspects, you must relate to it and see it as the source of suffering and full of disappointments, instead of trying to look for something memorable or lovely in it. Whether it's the companionships, etc., that you're developing in people, whether among the Sangha or with people, lovely sight, lovely places, lovely temple, because veneration sometimes means people will come and offer you things, offer you a dwelling. That's one of the requisites, right? Lord Buddha was never attached to the Veluvana monastery, to the Bamboo Grove monastery, the first that was offered to him by King Bimbisara. He was never attached to Anathapindika's monastery that was given to him with all of Anathapindika's wealth thrown to the ground, literally, to make it happen. He never felt like it belonged to him. Same thing with Visakha's palace on the eastern side of Savatthi. He didn't have this much of an attachment to them. So, because the moment we do have attachment, that is going to lead us down a terrible path, because a path of suffering and disappointments. That's very disheartening. And this path is not about this becoming disheartened or experiencing suffering. It's the opposite of that. So he was teaching the monks to not be attached to whatever it was that they were gaining, whether it was the name, whether it was the following, whether it was possessions like temples, this, that, robes, respect. And because in all these meditations, you must clearly observe and stay with the fact that all conditioned things are indeed impermanent, remaining utterly unreliable and unstable, irrespective of whatever event you may come to experience. Always closely staying with the understanding that all things are truly inconstant and transitory, where nothing that is constructed or conditioned stays the same ever. That pulls the rug from everything, underneath everything. Each breath is coming and going. What are you holding on to? That's the biggest teacher. Then, having thus received this instruction from their teacher, the Buddha Kakusanda, those bhikkhus all went and secluded themselves, whether into their individual kutis or to the remote wilderness areas, whether sitting by the exposed roots of trees or within mountain caves, as they all wholeheartedly engaged in the practice prescribed by the Blessed One. Thus, whenever looking upon the body, those bhikkhus meditated while clearly seeing and perceiving it to be ugly and dreadfully awful, instead of trying to look for something beautiful or lovely in it. And it's a repeat, this portion of the sutta, of exactly what the Buddha said to them, the instruction. Then we go back to Venerable Mahamogallana teaching the Māra. Then, O evil one, early one morning, on rising up, the perfectly self-awakened Buddha, the Tathagata Kakusanda, put on his robes, and by taking his outer robe and alms bowl, while being accompanied by the Venerable Vidhura, the chief disciple, who was closely following behind him as his attendant, they both went walking for alms as they approached the village nearby. It was then that Māra Tajjanīya, the evil one, your own uncle, took possession of a young boy on the street by making that youngster pick up a piece of rock and toss it at the Venerable Vidhura, the chief disciple. He was basically counterpart of Venerable Sariputta, of our Buddha. So now the sharp rock struck the Venerable, hitting and wounding the chief disciple, as it opened a big gash on his head, which immediately started bleeding profusely. Yet the chief disciple, without making any sound, kept walking closely behind the Blessed One, his teacher, bearing the pain of the blow he received on his head, while also bleeding from that gaping wound. It was at this moment that the Tathagata, Lord Buddha, Kakusanda, turned with his elephant gaze and looked at Māra Tajjanīya, the evil one, while uttering these words. Indeed, this Māra Tajjanīya neither understands the limits of his stupidity, nor comprehends their severity. And it was right at that exact moment, O evil one, when the Blessed One had just spoken the last word, when suddenly the evil one, Māra Tajjanīya, died on the spot and fell from his powerful state and was immediately dragged and deposited into the lowest of the hell realms as he landed at the horrid place called the Great Niraya Hell itself. This is at the bottom of the hell realms. It has many layers, many stations. As you go down, it is far worse than the one preceding it. This is at the bottom. By the way, that's a very powerful image to see the chief disciple walking behind, being hit in the head with a sharp rock, an object, bleeding. A sharp image indeed. And how many of us are able to do that? It puts everything you believe in on the line, as it were. Everything you strive for, everything that you hold valuable comes at play, comes out. All he had to do was say, ouch. He didn't do that. He just carried on because he was Lord Buddha's attendant. And Lord Buddha is aware of everything that's going on. That's why you're called the Buddha. And the image that, in case you missed that portion, the elephant gaze, that's a term for the Tathagatas. One of the qualities of a Buddha, all Buddhas have this. When we hear the term, they have the elephant gaze. The Buddha does not turn his head like this to look to the right, to the left, with just the neck up. Okay, the chin, the nose, the eyes turning as the front of the body, let's say the chest is pointing in this direction while his head is turning that way. or to look down. His whole body turns like an elephant's. We have excellent examples of this in the other sutta, in the Brahmayu, in Majjhima Nikaya, where we have a clear explanation of the Buddha's mannerisms, movements, behavior, all taken down by a young Brahmin, recorded for us. So it's worth to look into that. Maybe we'll do a sutta one day on that one. So let's go back to, well, let's go down to hell. Now, this most horrible place, the great Niraya hell, is also known by 3 other names, which are the hell that is closely tied to the 6th sense sphere, the hell where iron spikes come and join together in one's own heart, and the hell that cannot be described but only known and experienced by oneself. It was then, O evil one, when the guardians of that terrible great Niraya hell came to me, the one who but a moment earlier was the mighty and powerful Māra Tajjanīya himself, your own very uncle, and informed me, you there, when you experience these massive iron spikes come smashing together as they pierce your heart and touch each other, then that is your sign that you already have spent 1,000 years here, being roasted, grilled, and skewered while alive, ceaselessly for 1,000 years, non-stop. Thus, I spent not only a year, nor 100 years, nor just 1,000 years, but for many millennia, I was kept there to suffer in utter misery. For countless thousands of years, where I was roasting, grilling, and being skewered alive ceaselessly, non-stop, experiencing the indescribable pain and impossible to fathom and terrible torture that awaits all those who land into the great Niraya hell. And after having experienced many thousands of years in that great Niraya hell itself, the pain I began to experience was finally one that could be considered a remotely describable sensation. One that, although was somewhat lessened and downgraded, nevertheless, it was still terribly painful and excruciating indeed, and very difficult to imagine, let alone to describe. It was then that my form took a different shape, whereby my body took the form of a man, while my head was that of a fish. Now this is what the Venerable Mahamogallana said while scolding Māra, the evil one, who was still standing next to his door. Then the Venerable Mahamogallana continued addressing Māra while speaking in verse. Oh, you should have witnessed that terrible hell. That's unfathomed in the misery it will bring to you, just as it did to Dusi, the old Māra of times gone by. For I was he, you see, the Māra you now claim to be. But soon I found out I was now being roasted alive again and again, as a punishment for the assault and injury I caused to Vidhura, the chief disciple of Kakusandha Buddha, during those ancient and forgotten times. You are clueless as to the pain you now bring upon yourself, just as I did, when, to my surprise, I ended up being skewered repeatedly more than 100 times with iron spikes, with each blunt head painfully piercing through me, delivering such unimaginable agony. That's the kind of hell which now waits for you, the same miserable torture that I, as Dusi, Māra of that era, had to face, being dragged to and getting boiled alive for such a long time, simply for causing pain and injury to Vidhura, the chief disciple of Kakusanda Buddha of those ancient and forgotten times. Don't you see, Kanha, O you dark, deluded fool, that if you in any way come terrorizing or causing harm to any one of the Buddha's bhikkhus, especially a bhikkhu from whose eyes no such distant memories or forgotten details could ever remain hidden, while you yourself could never imagine, let alone come to know, then for sure you are to fall headfirst into the deepest abysmal hells, where you'll remain in misery for a very long time indeed, and face indescribable suffering there, in total and unrelenting agony. There are entire palaces and mansions that stand so tall, lasting for entire eons easily. They rise up from deep waters of a lake as wide as an ocean, surrounded by the effervescent waters that glisten in the colors of deep blue and lapis lazuli, brilliantly as they shine and sparkle in so many dazzling colors and hues, lighting up those bastions where the mighty devas and their dancing nymphs dwell carefree in absolute ease and utter happiness. Don't you see, Kanha, you dark deluded fool, that if you in any way come terrorizing or causing harm to any one of the Buddha's bhikkhus, especially to a bhikkhu who knows all such details and from whom nothing is kept hidden, then for sure you are to fall headfirst into the deepest abysmal hells, where you'll remain for a very long time indeed, and face indescribable suffering too, in total and unrelenting misery. After all, did you really forget that it was me, the one to whom the Buddha himself asked to go ahead and teach a lesson to the Bhikkhu Sangha, when they stood there fully stunned and shaken in terror, as I wiggled my big toe and gently touched one of the beams, shuddering the entire palace of Migara's mother, along with its inhabitants too? Don't you see, Kanha, you dark deluded fool, that if you in any way come to assault by causing harm to any one of the Buddha's bhikkhus, especially to one who is able to accomplish such a feat, then for sure you are to fall headfirst into the deepest abysmal hells, where you'll remain for a very long time in misery and face indescribable suffering there, in total and unrelenting agony. Also, how could you be so foolish enough to forget that it was in fact me, that very bhikkhu, who once shook even the heavens above, when the tapping of my big toe yet again sent an earthquake through Tavatimsa's newly erected gigantic Vajayanta palace, causing terror and fear to arise in the hearts of all devas present, where even Sakka himself was terrified, completely awestruck and amazed by the mastery he clearly witnessed that I possess, in displaying such psychic power unfathomed even by the gods. So don't you see, Kanha, or you dark, deluded fool, that if you in any way come to assail or cause harm to any one of the Buddha's bhikkhus, especially to one who is able to accomplish such a feat, then for sure you are to fall headfirst into the deepest abysmal hells, where you'll remain in agonizing pain for a very long time, while facing indescribable suffering there, tortured and bereft in total misery. Hence, it seems you forget that it was me, the one who went to Tavatimsa in person and straightway questioned Sakka in front of his newly erected Vajayanta palace, by asking him directly, as he stood there among his retinue, Kosiya, could you share with us what the Blessed One explained to you when you asked him about the bhikkhu who is released? That brief and encapsulating instruction, the concise and well-defined teaching that can be easily discerned, the one with the help of which the Bhikkhu gets liberated through the destruction of craving by putting an end to all suffering. And I was also the one to whom Sakka provided the answer to that very question, as he stood there in front of me with both hands of his in respectful Anjali. So you still don't seem to get it, Kanha, you deluded idiot, that if you in any way approach to terrorize or cause harm to any one of the Buddha's bhikkhus, especially to one who is able to accomplish such a feat, then for sure you are to fall headfirst into the deepest abysmal hells, where you'll remain for a very long time indeed, and face unimaginable agony there, in complete and unrelenting misery. It seems you've also forgotten that I was also the one who questioned that particular Brahma god in his Brahma realm, interrogating him within the Suddhamma hall in front of his own retinue by asking, "How about now, friend? Are you still going to hold on to that wrong view of yours? Or is it that the thickly deadlocked ignorance of those like you in the Brahma realm has been truly smashed into smithereens by the glorious radiance displayed in front of you, which you, with your very own eyes, are now unmistakably witnessing right here? Furthermore, Kanha, you don't realize that I was that bhikkhu to whom that same Brahma replied respectfully, quickly and delightedly, by speaking in verse the following: Most Venerable Sir, the wrong view I had at one point in the past is indeed no more. For in witnessing the glorious radiance displayed in front of me here with my very own eyes, the thickly deadlocked ignorance I was living in while being in this Brahma realm is now truly smashed into smithereens. In fact, along with that, Venerable Sir, I now see the silliness of my old evil belief, where I used to keep thinking that I am eternal, living in permanency. All that nonsense, too, has now been fully washed away and is no more. So you see, Kanha, you dark and deluded fool, that if you in any way come trying to assault or cause harm to any one of the Buddha's bhikkhus, especially to one who is able to accomplish such feats, then for sure you will fall headfirst into the deepest abysmal hells, where you'll remain for a very long time indeed, and face indescribable agony, experiencing terrible, unrelenting misery. Don't forget the fact that through the sheer power of release, which I gained through meditation, I am the one who has reached out and touched the very peak of great Mount Meru, and similarly with the unreachably far, deep forested eastern quarter of the universe too. For I am the one indeed who not only knows about those outermost reaches of existence, but even directly I have gone and visited those realms while interacting with those beings who live there, calling it their beloved home. So you see, Kanha, you dark and deluded fool, that if you in any way come terrorizing or try to cause harm to any one of the Buddha's bhikkhus, especially to one who is able to accomplish such a feat, then for sure you are to fall headfirst into the deepest abysmal hells, where you'll remain for a very long time indeed, and face terribly indescribable suffering there, in complete and merciless agony. Therefore, O Māra, you fool, just like the fire itself does not go on thinking, I shall burn this person over here, or that one over there, but it is in fact the idiot's fault who goes off chasing after the fire, who, driven by his own lunacy, tries to grab or assault the fire instead. which is why he's the only one who gets burned in the end, scorching himself with the burning fire and its blaze, and not, therefore, the other way around. So in just the same manner, Māra, you fool, if you try to come here and assail me or anyone else in your feeble attempt to invade or injure the Tathagata or his noble sons, all you really end up doing is causing much harm and destruction onto yourself, bringing terrible pain and misery for you to bear for a very, very long time. For you will simply be throwing yourself into the merciless flames, just like that fool, sticking his hand out, thinking to bring injury to the fire, while stupidly touching its flames. Therefore, much demerit has now been accrued by this Māra, the heartless idiot, who went and tried attacking the Tathagata himself. You stupid imbecile. Do you actually think you can get away with such terrible evil that you caused? Or that somehow your evil actions won't bear any fruit, as they come crashing down upon you with their heavy to bear corresponding evil fruits? You are deceived by the illusion of time you think extends for you into a non-existent forever, as you go on heedlessly gathering for yourself evil rewards for the wickedness you pursue, with no regard to what you shall inevitably have to face. Oh, you end maker, you! So, do yourself and everyone a favor and just step back, by abandoning any hopes that you still may have of doing more evil against the mighty and matchless Buddha. And while you're at it, don't hold your breath either, by hoping to send terror or somehow shake us too, us bhikkhus, who are Lord Buddha's very own sons. Thus it was that the mighty chief disciple within the Bhesakala forest chastised and scolded Māra, that dark and heartless fool, who yet again found himself droopy-headed and dejected once more, for he was fully exposed along with his lame and lousy tricks, which is why that Yakka called Māra could not help but retreat in absolute defeat, as he disappeared from sight right then and there. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I love this. It's the verse section that I just read, I didn't want to interrupt the flow of it because it's so beautiful to hear, to listen, to read. It's from the Venerable Mahamogallana's own Theragatha verses. So it's much longer, but this portion is his scolding and giving, a piece of his mind to Māra. That chunk is also used within the sutta itself. Are there any questions, comments, thoughts?
Bhante, thank you for this. I had a question. It's hard to imagine that the same being who was once in that role of Māra Dusi could also go on to become Venerable Mahamogallana. Can you explain that, how that would work?
That's the beauty of the Dhamma. Plain and simple. It teaches us, it gives us hope about ourselves, doesn't it? To become a little bit more gentle with ourselves, and more tolerant about ourselves and our abilities. that if a being like Māra Tajjanīya himself could turn around and become the chief disciple of Lord Buddha, attain arahantship within a single week, by the way. He was the one who attained it, arahantship, in a single week. Venerable Sariputta attained it in 2 weeks. Then I must have some hope. Right? Can we say that about ourselves in our own practice? So, but to try to address your question in a more methodical way, I would say, if that's the right term, we have to look at where we are first. Where are we starting from? Whether in asking a question or completing a task or being on the path. What am I working with? What do I have? What are my rough materials? Am I a despicable being to start off with? Okay? So when we look at things being solid, meaning with the firm idea of Sakkaya Ditthi, the idea of making a body for ourselves, making a self of ourselves, taking it seriously that there is a self here somewhere, an essence, a core somewhere, which is wrong view. When we function from that premise, then it becomes very difficult, because what you're also doing is also you're calculating the amount of hardship you have caused to others. This is where individuals will grab onto and hold on to an error they have made, a mistake, a terrible, let's say, breaking of sila even in the past, and they hold that above their head. I'm a terrible being, Bhante. I'm a terrible, terrible, terrible being. Okay? One of the greatest examples that I consider to be one of the best antidote, the cure, in fact, to such false thinking is Venerable Angulimala. You will never beat the record of Angulimala in breaking sila. It's impossible. There's no way you can catch up even to Angulimala in the amount of horrific acts he committed in a single lifetime. So when I came across Venerable Angulimala, all of a sudden I was like, wow, he became an arahant? Yes. At the first encounter with the Buddha, he attained the first stage of awakening. He became a Sotapanna on his knees. Wow. He just killed 999 people. He didn't kill them in their sleep necessarily. In many cases, he tortured them. Men, women, it didn't make any difference. It didn't. There was no distinction for him. They were just a target. They were not even anything. He killed them. So when I came across Venerable Angulimala's example, I was like, okay, I could breathe. There's hope for me. Now, in many cases, Lord Buddha says this in the numerical discourses, especially, it comes to mind. He says, wise is the bhikkhu, wise is the person who uses hiri and ottappa. These are wise, considerate, moral shame, having that conscientious awareness, and wise moral dread, wise moral fear, consideration of, okay, what's if somebody would see me doing this or thinking this out loud, what would I continue thinking this? What if they see me doing this? Is this appropriate? If you get shocked already, that's a big already sign that you shouldn't be engaging in that, because there's some element there that doesn't correspond with the Dhamma. So what I'm saying here is, excuse me, when you have Hiri-ottappa, they have wisdom in it. Don't forget, they have wisdom in it. Versus someone who is simply in a mode to chastise themselves because that's how they have functioned. I'm a terrible person. Oh, I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible person. Okay. The Buddha calls those foolish bhikkhus who go ahead and chastise themselves or feel remorse when there's no need. He says that. The Buddha says this in the numerical discourses. When there are no reasons for a person to feel remorse, to go ahead and feel remorse, what is that? That's agitation in the mind, agitation in the heart. That is driving you away from the Dhamma. There's nothing noble about it. Nothing. So that flogging yourself, and you have examples of that in later on in Mahayana, where people worshipped it. Bodhicharya Avatara of Shantideva, one of the stupidest pieces of material you can find in Buddhist literature, even in the Mahayana standards. In it, he just keeps flogging himself, punishing himself, and remorse, and crying, I should be this. I should say, okay, when does this show end? When do we get to the Dhamma? What is this? He's doing a one-man show on abuse, self-abuse. There's no wisdom there. There's no hiriyottappa there. So this is at the crux of the problem with many people, when we cannot shake off that idea that, well, because Venerable Mahamogallana was Māra himself, that should cancel out the possibility of him becoming an arahant. That is a deluded way of thinking. That is very much in line with wrong view, because we do not see us growing out of such a, or ourselves. We cannot come out of this pain, because the person has to allow themselves to heal. The Putujjana, in order for them to stop being a Putujjana, an untrained, unwise, undisciplined, uneducated in the Dhamma type of a person who doesn't respect the noble ones, the Dhamma, in order for that person to no longer be Putujjana, has to think about how does it feel to become no longer a Putujjana. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to visualize yourself, to see yourself as a potential of growing out of that. Instead of locking that image, the old image of, oh, Venerable Mahamogallana was an evil person, was Māra himself. Ooh. So how could he make that shift? So if Venerable Angulimala could make that shift from moment to moment, not in a whole lifetime, by the way, in the single morning, he was about to kill his own mother, Angulimala. That's why the Buddha intervened. And he dropped his mom as a target, and he looked at the Buddha as a target. So he's still intent on killing another being. Within less than an hour, he had seen the Dhamma. That's how quick. It's not even a lifetime. So we have this secret agenda in our mind. I have to jump through all these hoops in order for me to attain something, jhana, to this and that. And depending on the lifestyle we've had, that also is very, very important, because we use that as our rough material, as I was saying. Where you come from. When you have perceived your life and the accomplishments you've made as things that appear and manifest only after so much turmoil, so much suffering. Venerable Mahamogallana, in a different sutta, he mentions this. He says there are those who practice with the easier way and attain the goal, and there are those who practice with the difficult way and attain the goal. And there are those who practice with the difficult way and they never achieve. So we are the authors of the process, and whether we make any progress. So if I say, oh, forget it, this journey is going to be hell. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off. okay, who's putting the hurdles on my path? I am. And this has to do also with conceit, by the way. Mana, which will be with us until arahantship is attained. In fact, it won't be attained if we still are holding on to conceit. It doesn't drop after you become an arahant. It has to drop before you become an arahant. It's one of the conditions. Just like restlessness has to drop, be relinquished before you become an arahant. Just like ignorance has to be dropped before you become an arahant. It is the requirement, plus two other fetters. So there's nothing bad about you saying, okay, I come from a rough background. After all, aren't you today in a better position than you were 6 years ago? In some areas of your life, at least. So how did it change? There are other people who are still there 6 years later. What happened? So this then gives you the audacity to grow. Otherwise, the seed will never grow into a tree. The seed will remain a seed. Oh, come on, look at me. I'm so puny. I'm nothing. I'm just little seed. Yeah. A mustard seed happens to be one of the smallest seeds. But once it's planted and it grows and it has the right conditions, guess what? It grows up to be one of the biggest trees, and it houses so many thousands of birds and their nests. How is that possible? So this then teaches us to look at the seed and see the tree. That's what the Lord Buddha did, I think, whenever he saw a person, a potential individual over there, a beggar or this or that, or a king. He didn't see them the way they looked or behaved. He saw their potential. Now the key is, can I see that potential in me? When you're listening to these suttas, are you willing to relinquish the old image of you, Patachara? Like your namesake. She was an amazing arhat. Bhikkhuni Patachara. Recently, I translated one of, few of the Therigatas, and in it, so many nuns are calling out her name. They're saying, you are our mother. She was the one that they approached. And she came from hell. Her life was hell. She saw hell. She experienced hell. When she came to Lord Buddha, she was in hell. And look how she changed. And then you have 300 nuns who come to her and she teaches them the Dhamma. And they all become arahants. They practice. They all become arahants. They call her. They come bowing to her. All these nuns come bow down to they call her mother, you know. How was that possible? It is possible because the attitude is key, your intention. Intention, however, without action means nothing. Remember that. So for this, you need to wake up every morning with such gratitude to be alive, inhabiting this body that gives you the opportunity to live with some joy, that allows you the capacity to walk away from the past, the fears of the past, the disappointments of the past, because you cannot have disappointments of the past lingering on while you also want to attain the highest fruits of the Dhamma. Doesn't work. So Patachara had to relinquish being Patachara. Kisa Gotami had to relinquish being Kisa Gotami, the unfortunate mother, losing her child. the image of ourselves had to be relinquished. Similarly with Venerable Mahamogallana and any one of the Arahants. Is this addressing your question, you think?
Thank you. Yes.
Good question. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? Because we're the only ones who hold ourselves back the most. Because guess what? Māra, when he speaks, he's not speaking in someone else's voice. Knows us more than we know ourselves, remember? So we are hearing ourselves. That's why it sounds so convincing. They are excuses. I shouldn't practice. It's okay. I can let go of sati today. I was doing sati all day yesterday, this whole week. So let me just cut back a little bit on sati. Let me take it easy on myself and this whole sila business. It's okay. I can just, let down my hair. Just, let me. So what we tell ourselves is very important. The excuses that the Buddha could have given himself, Siddhartha Gautama, were many. I mean, he just had a son, remember? That's strong enough of a reason to keep a person inside, under the same roof as his family, as his wife, as his son, as his father, as his kingdom. So your reasons must outweigh. Angulimala knew very well that all the people that he had killed and chopped off their fingers and made a necklace for himself to take to that deluded criminal of a teacher he had one time who advised him to do this, fooled him into doing this, he was not happy. He was in pain. He was hearing their voices. Even after he became a bhikkhu, he was hearing and seeing in his mind's eye all the torture he had caused to people. Imagine the trauma and the guilt, especially. So it would have been impossible if he didn't have the Buddha for him to come out of it. But he did. He did. But we also have the Buddha with us. Angulimala might have heard a few suttas in his lifetime from the Lord Buddha, far fewer than we have. So we can hear the Buddha's voice. We can hear him speaking to us. We can hear him advising us. And we can use Venerable Mahamogallana's example, is that he was Māra Dusi, he turned out to be the chief disciple. There's hope for me. I think that's a good place to start from every single day and go easy on yourself in that sense. So I will stop here, and if there are no questions, let us transfer some merits.
Bante, sorry.
Oh,
Can
yes.
I ask one more question?
Sure.
When Māra was invading the minds of those villagers, in terms of the karma they were making, was that intention to commit those bad deeds their own? Or I'm just... because they suffered the consequences of that. Could you explain that?
Yes, that's again a good question, because it ties in with what I was saying just now, as far as Māra uses your own voice, your own logic. Essentially, the action that you are going to commit eventually, based on that impulse, shall we say, is your own. The voice didn't do it. You did it. You heard the voice, or the inclination or thing. That's why it's the same thing as seeing a billboard that says kill, 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 or do this, buy, buy, buy. Okay, the billboard is doing that. Okay, you might have it 360 all around your face. Fine. It's a pretty intrusive influence. Yes, but it's merely an influence. Somebody has to take action given that influence, either to ignore it or to enact it. These people enact it. That's why later on, when Māra possessed their bodies and minds and told them go in and pay respect to those monks, they didn't know why they were doing it, but they did it because, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And maybe they even came from a good place, but it wasn't from a deep, deep, deep faithful place. They just had the inclination to do it, but nevertheless, they did it. They did it. That's why they ended up in the heavenly realms, versus the first group of individuals who, again, were under the influence, but they acted upon those influences. So ultimately, it is the person who has to take action, no matter what type of influences you have around you. Ultimately, no one makes you do anything. Okay? Even Angulimala had to walk with his own feet away from that dark forest. He had to relinquish, toss all his weapons himself. The Buddha didn't pull away his sword from him. The Buddha never made anyone do anything. He gives the option to us. So, given that, absolutely, the individual is going to have to naturally be the recipient of the vipaka, the fruit of that, the consequence of that particular action. Now, that does not leave the person, the influencer, out of the loop. That's why individuals in powerful positions who go and say, I didn't pull the trigger, I didn't kill those thousands of people, I had nothing to do with the people in Gaza or this or that, or in different parts of the world. I didn't hit the button and 50,000 people died in Hiroshima. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I just signed a paper. I just made the call. I didn't pull the button. I didn't make the bomb. Aha. I didn't pull the trigger. No, it doesn't work like that. Did you play any role in it? Did you nudge anyone's decision? Did you move that action into place? Nudged it into place? That's what Māra did in these examples. But we see this also around us. But ultimately, it is us. That's why peer pressure, this and that people talk about, yes. But ultimately, we are in the driver's seat. Because kamma, Lord Buddha says, is our only inheritance. You will never inherit someone else's kamma. Remember that. It's your kamma that you're getting, no one else's. Now remember, Venerable Mahamogallana had to deal with his own kamma. That's why he spent over 10,000 years in that Niraya hell. Just in that hell. He still had to walk his way up. Crawl his way up. So that's why kamma is has such a powerful place in the Dhamma. We cannot minimize it. So one of the things that these deductive reasoning minded people, that the ones who have infiltrated the minds of people and convoluted rational thinking, and to make life be questioned in every way possible so that they can minimize the importance of so many other things that cannot be tested, because the instruments are not exactly the same instruments you find in a laboratory. Nevertheless, there are the instruments for it. We call that sati. We call it sampajanya. Those are the most advanced instruments there are in existence. And today's scientist has no clue what they are. That's why they go ahead and break sila left and right. That's why whenever they die, they go straight to hell. They do. Because for them, it's, oh, lights out, lights out. That's why these criminal people these leaders of country that one after the other, they die, poop, poop, poop. They think they lived fully, nobody touched them, they got away with so much, they enjoyed the pleasures of life, they caused pain and suffering to so many, and they said, as the vernacular goes, sucks to be you, better you than me. They thought that was it, they're off the hook. It doesn't work like that. Karma is there. The first verse of the Dhammapada, let's not forget, right, Upatissa? Manopubangama Dhamma, Manosetha Manomaya. Mind is the leader. Mind is chief. So whatever you're thinking, that is becoming, that's turning into action. That is kamma. That means there's intentionality to it. That's what makes it kamma. Otherwise, it's not kamma. And not every action is necessarily done with intention. Sometimes they're done by accident. Totally, without intention. You were walking and suddenly something happened and you smashed against something. You were watching where you were going, something came and hit. The Buddha would ask, did you intend to go ahead and kill that person, that thing, that on the way? No, I didn't. Really, I didn't. I was driving and all of a sudden they came out of nowhere and they hit me and they died. Sometimes airplane pilots, they have birds smash against their window, the airplane window in the cockpit. The bird will not survive, That doesn't mean that the pilot was flying around the sky looking for birds to kill. There's no kamma there. Unless he intentionally saw a flock of birds and he went straight at them. That's a different story. Again, the mind's role is key here. Does that help? Good. These are very important questions, and like rebirth, like kamma, as I was mentioning, the deductive reasoning mentality, mindset, has neutered, has killed off so many elements of the Dhamma in the teachings. And what people are presented with are this very dumbed down, that vulgar term, neutered version of the Dhamma. And anytime subjects like this show up, people run away. They won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. They don't want to deal with it because it's too out there, and they'll lose support from supporters. And then it's going to make people uncomfortable because many people are living the wrong lifestyle. So highlighting the importance of kamma is going to point out the lack in sila in people's behavior. People don't like that. They just want to do the ritualistic rites and ritual, donation, this and that. Okay, Bhante, just you stay there. You leave me alone. I'll, and we'll do Dhamma. That doesn't work. That's not why Lord Buddha came and taught. That's not Dhamma. That's not why we wear robes. It's a tough but enjoyable path. It's the most gratifying path you will ever see in existence, in all of your existences. Even Māra, becoming a Māra, all-powerful, that you have control, access to all the beings, from Brahmas down to the lowest. Flea on the back of a dog, you have access to. And then you die. Oops. And you open your eyes in the worst of health. He was not satisfied, Venerable Mahamogallana, as Māra. That's why they keep poking around people's business, get into business, so in making people, lead ruinous lives. because they're empty. Māra is empty inside. He doesn't have a voice. That's why he uses your voice. Māra doesn't have dreams. It's empty. It's a ghost. It's a nothing. That's why he enjoys when other people fall. Don't be one of those. And I'll stop here. So let us share some merits. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Lokasasanam. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Desanam. Akasatha Chabumata Devanagamahiddika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Mamparanti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May joy never leave your heart. May you and your loved ones all be blessed. May you be protected. And may your practice grow exponentially. May the Dhamma and its light glow in you all the time. May it take you straight to Nibbana Supreme as your heart wills it, works towards it, welcomes it. Till next time. Sukhi Hotu.